You're live from New York. It's Saturday night. No, wait, stop! No! It's a
This week's bonus episode is a special one for me because I am obsessed with Saturday Night Live. The whole process of the show and the amazing sketches that come from it. And I interviewed JZ Zonars. He started there as an intern back in the mid-'80s, and he has a really cool story about how that came about. Then he climbed the ladder to eventually being a sketch musician. Then after leaving SNL, he became a record consultant, worked with the likes of like Demi Lovato and the Jonas Brothers. And I actually went to high school with their bass player, Greg Garbowski. And JZ had some really cool things to say about him. So it was pretty cool. We knew some of the same people, sort of, I guess. But yeah, so we also talked about former cast members, the birthplace of Ron Burgundy, and some of the famous songs from the show, and so much more. You're going to love JZ. He is an awesome guy, and I love talking to him. So without further ado, enjoy. What I like to do with these, I don't know if you had a chance to check any of them out. It's really just finding out people's stories, and I think it was pretty cool when we chatted for a few minutes a couple weeks back now, and you said that you really enjoyed movies and especially sequels. So we'll talk about that too. But first, where does your story begin? Where'd you grow up?
I was born in Royal Oak, Michigan, just outside of Detroit.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and I grew up in their suburb called Birmingham in the 70s. Went to the public schools there and went to college out in the small liberal arts school in Michigan called Albion College. Graduated there in 85 and moved to New York City right away.
Where'd you live in the city?
Well, when I moved to New York, the very first year I lived in, believe it or not, in various people's apartments, including the 17th floor of 30 Rockefeller Center.
Nice.
Yeah. But, you know, like every other New Yorker, once I decided I was going to stay there, I mean, at my age, I moved every year. I tried every
I bet.
Every neighborhood. I love the West Village the most. I spent a good number of years, 3 years in Park Slope, Brooklyn. And then I settled in Hell's Kitchen, where I was happy for like the last probably 10 years I lived there.
When did you start playing? Like at what age did you start playing an instrument?
You know, I tried a bunch of instruments like piano and things when I was young, and nothing ever took. I never learned how to read music, but picked up guitar when I was 15 and had a lot of influential musicians around me at that time. I mean, people a little bit older than me that were players. And so from there, you know, that was my primary interest, more so than like academia. And it's pretty much what I always wanted to do. But I always found other work that was somewhat related. So my professional career didn't really begin until like, the mid-'90s, really.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, when I started playing on TV. I mean, I had done a lot of sessions and a lot of composing for film prior to that, film and television shows.
Really? Any ones that, I'm sure I've known a lot of them, but what were some ones that you worked on?
I did. There was Ben Stiller and I were really good friends when he was just starting out. And
no way.
He had a show on MTV.
Yeah, Ben Stiller show. Nice.
The Ben Stiller show. Yeah, and then he actually got a deal with Fox to do a network show on Fox. And so he brought me out to LA my first time to be his composer. And I did probably, I think, the first 3 episodes, and it was a gamble for me at that point. It was like, do I go back? Because I was working production for SNL at the time, and that was my staple gig. And I was thinking to myself, well, here I am in LA, man. I got a composer gig as opposed to, you know, having a production gig on SNL. but SNL had so much more reliability and security. And then, of course, the Ben Stiller show was canceled after the 5th show. And I don't think that it had anything to do with Ben or the content that he was producing and writing. It was really, I think it was budgetary. But, and then they won an Emmy, for Christ's sake, after that. But
no way. So they get canceled and they get an Emmy.
Yeah. Yeah. And those, that material is out there. We did a lot of parodies of U2 stuff where I would rewrite a U2 song and he would parody it with lyrics and make it sound like The Edge. Then there was also, I did a couple of themes. There was a show called Friday Night on NBC. I wrote the theme music for and a lot of the interstitial cues. And there was also awesome. A show for Comedy Central called Exit 57. And I did 2 seasons of that. That was a lot of fun. I was kind of treading water. I was almost like out of my league on that one. It was like Stephen Colbert and before he was anyone, and Amy Sedaris. It's called Exit 57. It was on Comedy Central. They did 2 seasons.
So that was before like Strangers with Candy and like.
Exit 57. I think Strangers with Candy. I'm pretty sure came after that.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I got to check that one out because it's funny. Like I just watched the Dana Carvey. Too Funny to Fail on Hulu. I've seen it like 20 times.
Yeah, sure. That's a great film.
That one is like so phenomenal because you had like Colbert was the backup for Carell and like just like all these guys working together. And then it didn't work. And then, that's funny. I got to check out X7. So how did you come about, working at SNL? How does that even, where do you see a job posting for that?
It was a total fluke, man. Seriously, like, the school that I went to, they have this great program. I think it still exists, called the Great Lakes College Association New York Arts Program. And it was a bunch of liberal, small, tiny 2,000 people colleges all around Michigan and the Midwest, Oberlin, Alma, Hillsdale, Kalamazoo College, I think. And what they would do is they would secure students with internships in the arts in New York. So if you had, you were an art history student, you would work in a museum for a semester. And I always loved this idea, but I didn't have the time to take a semester off. So I had made friends with the guy who was in the music area. And he said, look, man, if you're ever in New York, come see me. So cut to, it's September now. I had graduated in May and I spent the summer backpacking through Europe. And then I was just flopping at a friend's house in Manhattan because my sister had moved there and I was like building shelves for her or something. And I went to go see this guy, right? And this is September. And while I'm sitting there with him in his office, and it was in Hell's Kitchen, believe it or not, he gets a phone call from the woman who is running the music department for the new season of SNL. And she's like, I need an intern now, right? And this guy, he would always hook his students up the previous spring. So he didn't have anybody that he could put there. And I had already graduated. So we kind of made this sort of, wink and a nod at each other. And I went over there and told him I was a student and I got the job. And and that's why I didn't have an apartment because I wasn't making any money.
Oh my God.
And I had to be there at insane hours. So I would wind up just sleeping on the couch. And then in the morning, I'd be the first one at the front desk. And so the producers would come in and think, oh my God, this guy's such a good worker. He's so earnest. He's always here catching the early worm,
That's George Costanza when he locks his keys in his car.
Yeah. exactly.
God, that is so cool. So what cast was that? So this is 85?
Well, no, this is 85. So it was a very weird year. It was the year that actually I think that NBC was considering canceling the show.
Yeah.
And they talked Lorne into coming back after a 5-year absence. You know, Lorne created it, obviously, and then did it from 75 to 80. And then I think it was Dick Ebersol and Gene Domanian. And so that 85 season is kind of known as like the lost season because
oh my God, I'm looking at the cast.
Yeah. Weird cast.
What a
right?
weird
Nora Dunn, Joan Cusack,
dude,
Randy
Robert Downey.
Quaid.
Yeah, Robert Downey Jr.
Robert Downey. I used to bust him smoking a joint underneath the bleachers right before 11:30. Anthony Michael Hall.
Oh my God. Man, I can't believe some of those people they had. Dude, Damon Wayans was on a season of SNL?
Yeah, that didn't end well. He did I think he was playing Louis Farrakhan on Update. And he wanted, I don't quote me on this, I could be wrong. Yeah, I probably shouldn't even talk about it, but I think he played Louis Farrakhan as gay. And the writers didn't want him to. The writers were thinking they were doing, making some poignant, point, that they were getting their political views across.
Yeah.
And that if he played him gay, that no one would take it seriously. But, Damon went out there and knowing that it was live and that it was totally within his control, he played the guy gay.
Wow.
And then I don't think he ever did another show after that. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, man. So what were some of the intern duties that you had to do? Just like gopher, just doing whatever?
Well, back then, keep in mind that that production staff only lasted one season.
Oh, okay.
After that, my duties expanded and changed drastically. But that first year, my main fucking job was to go to get in a limo and go out to the airport and greet the band, the guest band.
Oh my God, dude, that must have been surreal for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it wasn't like all hunky dory. There was stress and, there were, but yeah, I mean, couldn't really imagine a better job for me other than that be a rock star.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was open to anything at that point. It was such a great, great time in my life because I had just come out of college and my mind was like a fucking sponge. And I didn't really consider SNL like a career or something that I could do year after year and have financial, security at the minimum. But at the same time, I didn't, that ignorance is what kept me there. Because if I had been all worried about it, man, and, stressed and worried about making marks with Lorne or having a good write-up or whatever, I would have failed. But it was because it was just so much fun and I was able to have a lot of time off to pursue my music. I grew and grew within the show, and that's where I cut my teeth, man. I wound up doing 18 straight seasons. Jesus. From 85 to 03.
Wow. When did you start? When did you lose the intern role? Was that next year?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. I
awesome.
became music coordinator and then a bunch of different titles, but my job just kept growing sort of whatever needed to be done that wasn't getting done right, I would do. And I had a pretty good reputation. And then when, as being someone who they could count on. And then in 95, G.E. Smith, who had been my boss, who was the music director and of course played in the house band.
Yeah.
He left. And so I started playing guitar for sketch music, for sketches. And that was my favorite part of the whole gig. I did that for 7 years. That was so much fucking fun.
So for 7 years, dude, I was trying to think of, I'm trying to think of all the sketches that have because music is so key in everything, like movies, like
sure
themes.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, Debbie Downer. So that was Debbie Downer during
Yeah,
that time,
no,
right?
that's after me. The one.
Oh, that was afterwards? Okay.
I know the trombone player that did it, but
Oh, okay. I was thinking that was before 2003, but I guess she was still there then. But what were some of the...
here's what. Yeah, no, I worked with Rachel Dratch.
Yeah,
I
she's
never
awesome.
really did a music thing with her. I did music things with Anna Gasteyer.
Nice. She's
She
awesome.
was Cinder Calhoun, the Lilith Fair artist who would sing a song at Update about the holidays. We did that like 4 or 5 times. That was me playing guitar. Anything that Will Ferrell did, I must have done it 10 times with him. If he would hold a guitar and fake playing it while I played it off camera. That's how we would rehearse it. And I did it with a lot of hosts too. I did it with David Coveney, with The Rock, with Brendan Fraser, with Garth Brooks.
Now, like growing up outside of Detroit from like a small town, you moved to New York City. You're sitting on the couch with that guy when that phone call comes in. Is it crazy thinking about like that you're working with all these people? I know they're just regular people, but the SNL is like a staple. It's always there.
Well, that's a good question, man, because in any normal situation, I would say, yeah. But for me, it was like, I was like, oh, SNL music department, cool. I'm going to be a rock star in a year, so I'll just do this, right?
Yeah.
I was delusional, basically, right? Yeah. But it was because of that. You could call it ignorance, actually, and the saying, "Ignorance is bliss." Because of that idea, that mindset, I never let it get to me. It never overwhelmed me. Now, 15 years later, when my rock star career was clearly not going to happen, and I wasn't really going anywhere playing sketches, ironically, that's when I started thinking about it as a career and trying to get myself promoted, which was entirely inappropriate. And that's when it all kind of started going sour.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, but I'm speaking from like an independent career, not just like somebody who's into like the star fucking,
Yeah.
But and there were always times like Al Green, fucking I could barely speak when I met him. David Gilmour. Certain people, it would always be surprised because I was doing it, hanging with the best of them, partying with the best of them. But every once in a while, somebody would come in and I'd find myself like flabbergasted. I probably just had something to do with my personal life at the time.
I don't want you to speak out of turn, like mention people's names, but was there any people that like any of the bands that when you were doing the picking up at the airport or when they're, there for the week, was there anybody that you're like, man, I love these guys, and you met them there, and you're like, oh my god, I can't even listen to these guys anymore because they're not.
They're definitely.
I guess I'd be like a Gene Simmons, but everybody knows how he is.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, that's twofold. It's like, do they not have the chops and the talent that you thought they had, or are they just plain out dicks? Are they just assholes, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that the latter, what I found out about the latter is that these people are all dicks at certain points in their lives. Okay. So it doesn't, you could work with, God, who's a good example? Paul Simon, and he's going through a divorce, and it's not going to be fun. Okay.
Yeah.
Or then you work with him, and he just had a baby, and you wind up having this like half an hour conversation with him, and just feeling like you're somebody super important because he's giving you all this attention. You can't put people that are under that much pressure living in the public eye. You cannot size them up. You can't, and you can't hold them accountable entirely for their psychological, disposition, because God knows what the fuck they're dealing with.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And plus they're artists to begin with. So, we're all screwed up.
Yeah.
And then the former, which is, there were definitely some artists that came in that disappointed me in terms of playing, but that was far and few between. And frankly, really not even related to the work I did on SNL. I mean, SNL, for the most part, the caliber of the bands they booked always brought it. And if they didn't, we figured out ways to help them to do it, you know?
Yeah. So what was like the process? Because just talking to you for 20 minutes, you're a pretty funny guy. So I think that's why you're able to connect with a lot of these people too, like Ben Stiller and
a little comedy helps. Yeah, a little.
Oh no, totally. Yeah. So when you're doing like what's the process of like coming up with, say, like the sketch music, like Will Ferrell's, like, you know, you said he's like miming playing guitar and you're actually playing. Is it just doing it right at rehearsal, or are you him in a writer's?
No, they'll, you know, the whole thing, all of that stuff is conceptualized by the writers and the cast members on like a Tuesday night. And so they'll write like 5 or 6 different sketches that feature Will playing guitar, and we have to work them up that afternoon and play them in front of the whole staff at a big read through. And then after that, they pick like 30 sketches out of like 50 or 70.
Yeah.
And they work up the production for those and do blocking over a period of 2 days. And then on Saturday night at 7:30, they do a dress rehearsal, which is about 2 hours long. So they cut the things that don't work, that they worked up. And the entire time during that period, the shit's evolving. Something could happen in the news, if it's a current affair, that changes a lyric, or changes the disposition of a certain character. You know, so that's a beautiful thing about SNL, is that the live aspect of it allows them to be so like on point. You know, they're so like the shit doesn't escape them. They get stuff on the news and update that the fucking 11 o'clock news didn't have.
Yeah. No, I love SNL. I'm in Jersey and I grew up here, and just everything about it, I think it's like so addicting. And I'm sure the people that had great success there and left, like the writers and the performers, I'm sure when they leave, obviously they're going on to, in some cases, bigger and better things, or they just didn't want to do it anymore. But it's like such an addicting process when you think about it. Like Monday is like a blank slate. I know sometimes they have, like, I interviewed Jerry Minor.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I talked.
Jerry.
Yeah. So he was such a cool guy. He was only a 1-year guy, but he was like a writer, and then they brought him on as a performer instead of the sketches. But he was telling me some funny stories about like when people would pitch, like people would kind of like listen for the idea and kind of
the Monday pitch meeting in Lauren's office. Yeah.
Yep. So he said sometimes people would like kind of like try to take your idea, so you like almost pitch a fake idea. Yeah. So that whole process.
Kinds of bullshit.
Yeah.
And then like the fake laughter for the people that were more popular.
Yeah.
They pitch a lame ass idea in Lauren's office, but they get all this like fake laughter that Lauren responds to laughter, you know, and it's like misleading. Well, I mean, he saw through it, but you know, that kind of, I remember at a certain point, there might even have been a memo circulated about people overemphasizing their reactions. Yeah.
Yeah, Jerry, like just going back to that, he was telling me he used to pitch fake ideas. And he said one time when I think it was Christopher Walken, he said, he pitched like a fake idea. He didn't remember the sketch, but it almost made it to air because it made Christopher Walken laugh. But he said he just like made up all these things on the spot. He laughed, and then they were like, oh shit, now we have to write this.
Well, that's great to hear, because I always liked that guy. And if he was able to take it all with a grain of salt and have fun with it, then he was beating half the people in that room, because, you know, most of the people there were like clinging to their notepads and freaking out and sweating before it came their time to talk. And so if he was having fun with it like that, then that's fucking awesome.
Yeah, he was on, because I think he grew up outside Detroit too, maybe. Because I know he went
to that could be, yeah.
But so he was on Bob and David for like the last season on HBO. But no, he's one of those guys, man. He just want him to. He's had so many shows that he was on Lucky Louie that got canceled after a year. But so what was it like working with Lauren? Because he's really a god of sketch comedy. Like he started this.
I have got nothing but great things to say about Lauren Michaels. I always revered him, but I revere him even more now when I think about some of the experiences that I had, and I've watched how he reacted, how he was the one who had the answer at the fucking pinnacle moment without any hesitation. That, and then also just certain other methodologies that when I first started to figure out what they were, I questioned them and I thought, well, why the fuck is he doing this? But then the answer became clear later. Like fucking Don Corleone not trusting Tom Higgins with certain things, so then he could become his most trusted confidant. That kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
Thinking 2 steps ahead, like chess.
So I think one of the biggest moments, like when in your tenure there, like in the world, obviously in the world in New York City, was not right after 9/11. Like they had the big thing with, like the Yankees that year and SNL. That was like a big deal when it came back. And
dude, that was an amazing show. Amazing show. And Lauren, again, part of the heartbeat of the city. He had Giuliani and the firemen right there in the opening monologue. And then Giuliani turned to him and said, Lauren was like, can we be funny now? And Giuliani said, why start now?
I know. And I think that is what the essence of Lauren is and the show itself, because all those people over the years, cast members, I think they get it. And I think that's why and he's so great at finding talent, especially some of the newer guys.
Yeah, there's that. Yeah, it doesn't always work out, but that's, again, there's another aspect of what Lauren did with the show is that it's a meat grinder, okay?
Yeah.
And those people that pop out and create, extraneous careers afterwards, or those people who become like the catchphrase person at the water cooler Monday afternoon, those are the people that can stick it out. It's like survival of the fittest. It's not an easy gig. You got to fight for your airtime. You got to fight for your writing. You got to fight for your principles and your approach to standards and practices. And so there's a method to the madness there. I always found it very fascinating when I would think about how, and I really experienced this when I went to the 40th anniversary show, which was, 3 years ago or something. Remember, it was a primetime special. And so many of the people that I'd worked with over that 20-year period were there that I hadn't seen in so long. And it was like turning from somebody like Will Ferrell or Tina Fey to like Melanie Lewinsky or some who's like living in Cincinnati and raising a family.
Yeah.
It's like, why didn't things happen the way they did for this person as opposed to that person? And I think that first and foremost that we all have to take responsibility for how things turn out because it's things that we do. But there's also a certain element of timing. And timing in society in terms of like popular culture is largely luck. That's my opinion. I think that you can find yourself in the right place and time by no means of your own, and you can become extremely successful or completely, stomped on. And so I think that, first and foremost, it's whatever they did, how they reacted to the grind, but then also what was happening in society. Like, was there room for a guy like Will Ferrell to come on to the Hollywood movie scene and do all these comedic movies? Well, when was the last time we had a Jerry Lewis? Okay.
Oh, I know.
Right. So maybe there was a hole there. Okay. and I'm not comparing him to Jerry Lewis. I'm just, saying it as an example because, I mean, look at Cherry O'Terry. God bless her. I love that girl.
I know.
That woman, she's terrific. I've always loved her. She was always very sweet to me. And her and Will were on par for a while together as cast members.
Oh yeah.
And I think that it's not because of anything that Cherry did. Really, I think that it's more that there wasn't a space for a young woman like that in Hollywood at the time that there was for Will.
No, that's true.
Does that make sense?
And Will was at the fight. So I totally agree with everything you said. Like, obviously you have to have the skill, but when you're in that position, you have to be ready to hit a home run. Like Will playing George Bush, you're in front of the camera because that is like a big deal. Like you're always going to be in business, when you're able to do that.
Yeah. Well, that certainly helped a lot. And speaking to that very quickly, I'll just touch on that because, again, I'd like to come back to these sort of basic fundamental characteristics of the show and how Lauren, I think, should get credit for them, and that is the whole political satire. And if you were to look at a bar graph of ratings over the 45-year history now, or whatever it is, you would see a spike every election year.
Oh, yeah.
Because the fodder, I mean, look at Tina Fey and Nancy Palin.
I know.
For Christ's sake, right?
Yeah.
30 Rock may never have happened. Or maybe it was already in production. Who knows? But
I don't know.
But it's like that. That's when you have a show that is that connected to the pulse of society, you got an institution.
Oh yeah.
And that's what they have created. And it was probably should have been considered an institution when I left in 2003. And it probably was, but if I had really been aware of that, I probably never would have left.
Yeah.
But then I'd be living this isolated New York City person life. So I didn't have enough money for the house in the Hamptons.
No, that's true. So here's a question. We'll talk a little about like movies. And since you obviously enjoy music because you play it. So isn't it funny? We mentioned like Jerry Lewis and like Will Ferrell. There's only like I think in movies it's pretty rare, but you had like Will Ferrell. He did some really big movies, and not saying he hasn't done any big movies lately, but just think like Jim Carrey. He had like those 5 movies in a row that he nailed, and then it's almost like a band. Sometimes there's only like 5 albums worth of good material. Obviously, there's like the exception to the rules, but isn't that kind of odd?
No, I don't think it's odd at all, man. I think that it's all like very cyclical and part of the whole creative process. And I think that's great that you brought up the band thing because it's not even really 4 or 5 albums. It's the saying is everybody's got a record, and I'm questioning if they have a second record. Yeah. Right. And which is what's called the sophomore slump. Right. It's like when somebody comes out with a hit record, everyone's wondering, is it a one-hit wonder like, Soft Cell or something? Or
that's true. Yeah. I give it way too much credit. That's a lot of albums.
Yeah.
That's true,
But, for comedians or for actors, I think it's different because it's all about what the scripts are, which is a reflection of society and how good the production is or even the marketing, because a great movie can flop because of marketing. Will, I think maybe, I think that Will I think the last few things that I've heard about that he did might not have garnered the box office receipts that he has been known for. Yeah. But he's still viable. Jim Carrey, on the other hand, you got somebody who talk about peaking, right?
Oh, I know.
I mean, Will's had a slow and steady rise to the top, and he's been hanging out at there. But Jim shot up, right, and had just overly talented, accused of being an over actor, over and over on sets. Like he alienated people on movie sets because he was just so fucking good.
Yeah.
And that's not his fault. he was doing what they were paying him to do.
I don't know. Did you just see the documentary on Netflix about the filming of Man on the Moon?
I did not know, but I was with him then, and I worked with REM on that. Yeah.
Really?
Well, I mean, they did SNL.
Oh, that's cool. No, so if you get a chance to watch it, he stayed in character all the time.
I saw him at an SNL rap party with his head shaved.
Oh my God. He was acting.
And everybody was wondering. Nobody even knew about the movie. They were filming it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I guess they knew, but everyone was wondering, why the fuck is he here and he's bald? You know?
So the days when they were shooting the Tony Clifton scenes, it seemed, because it was like behind the scenes footage, he seemed like he was piss drunk. And even I just listened to an interview on Mark Maron with Danny DeVito, and he even said it was really difficult because he'd stay in character. Like they'd have to drag him to the hair and makeup. Like it was insane.
I got a great story for you.
Oh, go.
Which you're going to like because it has to do with film.
Sweet.
And it has to do with Will, and it's directly correlated to Jim Carrey and Tony Clifton. So real quickly, when I don't know how Will Ferrell and Adam McKay figured this out, okay? Because I didn't really understand it all until much later. But it became pretty obvious to some of the cast members that if they had a breakout character that Lauren was going to bring to Hollywood, like Wayne's World, and consequently they did so many, they did the Coneheads, they did Catherine Gallagher, Superstar, they did Tim Meadows, The Ladies Man, they did Night at the Roxbury, right? All those films that were based on SNL characters, okay? Even if you were a writer on that, you didn't get the money you would have gotten because NBC and Lauren owned those characters. Understand?
Yeah.
Yeah, they had the rights to the likeness of that character. So I was up in the office one week off during a season, showing it to my sister-in-law, and we heard Adam and Will arguing in the next room, and they were trying to figure out a song that they wanted for the screenplay they were writing. And I, of course, figured it out what it was, and I had it on CD, like best hits of the 70s. It was Drift Away. And I was like, what are you guys doing? And they're like, oh, we're just working on it. And about a month later, Will started appearing in meetings dressed as Ron Burgundy. In character as Ron Burgundy. Okay? And it was there. I think that this is how it all happened, or maybe it was just blind luck. But their thinking was, let's develop the character, but let's never put him on the show. Because the second they put the character on the show, that's when they own the likeness.
That's amazing.
So Will even appeared on stage with Puff Daddy when I had a 70-piece orchestra. They were doing the Led Zeppelin mashup for Kashmir for Godzilla.
Oh, yeah.
And Will came to me and he was like, I want to go on stage. And I was like, am I talking to Will or am I talking to Roy or Ray Burgundy? Ron,
yeah.
Yeah. I was like, and he's like, it's Ron. And I was like, well, then in that case, I got nothing to fucking say about it. And he went up there and we have videotape of him mugging Puff Daddy and Puppy's looking at him going like, what the fuck is going on? And he's there in his velvet suit with the ascot and the pipe or whatever, and so those guys, clearly very effectively developed that screenplay, got it produced, had a number of sequels as your topic.
Yes.
Because it was such a great idea and it had such great success and it was kind of groundbreaking. And you know how they say, write what you know about. Well, being a news team is not that unlike SNL. I mean, I watch the news for the comedy in it because I see how people react on live TV.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of factors I think that went into the success of that movie, but God bless them for fucking doing it in that way. And when you brought up Jim Carrey going to meetings as Tony Clifton or having a hard time getting out of character, I immediately thought of that.
Look at that.
Because it's such a great fucking story. And I don't think either one of those guys would really mind me talking about it. I think it's pretty much
Yeah, just the way they knew that was the case. Maybe they just heard from some of those other guys.
I'm sure. I mean, it became obvious. I mean, there were other writers that left that wrote other screenplays in Hollywood and were making a lot of fucking money.
Yeah.
All right. And but that was not the ticket if you were going to do it. And I'm not putting down Lorne or NBC. I mean, that's business.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think they were trying to curtail anybody's creativity either. I think that they were actually giving opportunities to these people. Some of those movies never would have been made.
No, yeah, I don't think they would have made it. It's Pat movie if it wasn't for.
Oh my
NBC.
God. I sang that theme. A man or a she, defecting on me. It's time for androgyny. It's just Pat.
That was you?
We used to overdub all of the music department. Anytime we had to do a jingle, we would overdub the not ready for primetime singers. Because we needed to accrue after dollars to get insurance because NBC didn't give us insurance. So we would always just double our parts and bury it in the mix because none of us were really great singers.
Yeah.
And we'd hire a couple ringers, to come in, and we'd always pay them extra. Dude, I sang Toonses.
Yeah.
I sang Unfrozen Caveman Lawyer. I sang Middle-Aged Man. I sang, I'm just trying to think of the best ones. Anyway, yeah, that was a great part of it too. Doing those sessions.
Oh,
I learned a lot about studio recording doing that.
So you still play, obviously, right? It's got to be like.
Yeah, I mean, right now I'm actually just I went to work for Disney. I don't know if we even got into all this after I left SNL. I had a brief stint as a record label consultant, and then I took on an artist development position at the Disney Music Group in 2006. And I worked there until October of 18.
Oh, wow.
And during that period, I developed a lot of the younger acts. We could
Jonas Brothers?
That, but yeah, I was instrumental with the Jonas Brothers. Yeah,
the one.
Absolutely.
So you know them like great. There's a guy that the bassist, Greg Garbowski.
I know Greg. Yeah,
I went to high school with him. My wife graduated with him. Yeah, I used to play. I used to play wiffle ball in his backyard.
Greg's a great guy, man. He was never really like the consummate. He was never the consummate bass player. None of the original band members were consummate players. But Greg has taken on a really great role with Philly Mack and John Taylor in the management side of things. And he's become very successful. And I think I saw him not too long ago at like a Demi Lovato gig or something. And I was very impressed with what he's done.
Yeah, and his wife's like a recording artist too, or his girlfriend. I don't know if he's married or not, but
I have no idea. But if you ever talk to him, you can say you talked to JZ.
What is that, man? What are the chances?
Yeah. Well, they were a great thing for me because they actually really we kind of helped each other. They gave me the opportunity to think in different ways, and I saw the potential in them as a group, and as in Nick and Joe, and Kevin in his own right. But it was a great thing to be a part of, because not only did we take a band that Columbia dropped, and if you look at that movie Chasing Happiness or whatever it is, they don't give any credit to the Disney Music Group for bringing them around. They give all the credit to Columbia, but Columbia fucking dropped them. And we made them a success. Yeah. And then they went back to Columbia after Nick did his solo thing, right? So that there's a little bit of something there that I just it never felt quite right. Not for me, but for my colleagues. But like I was trying to say is that they gave me the opportunity to think outside of the box and really use my artist relations skills and my musician skills and my knowledge of production. It was like a perfect combination, unlike a lot of the other Disney artists. Okay. And another thing is that all of a sudden, we broke them. The Disney music group's having a hard time breaking a new artist now, but we broke them.
Yeah.
And they did SNL. I went back to SNL as the record exec.
Oh my God. What was that like?
Yeah. It was fucking awesome. I'm standing there with him with the three of them and the dad, and Lauren comes in and runs up and hugs me before he even introduces himself.
What is that like, man?
Yeah.
That must
have
been
been so fucking
cool.
Awesome. Yeah. It was great. I went back probably 4 times. I went back with John Mayer, who I was working with
nice.
for Columbia. I went with System of a Down for Columbia, which was a nightmare because Serge swore, and I promised them he wouldn't. Yeah, and who else? Demi. I went back with Demi. I guess Demi.
So you're kind of a big deal.
Pardon me?
You're a big deal.
Well, no, dude. I mean, come on. I'm just a fucking guitar player from Detroit who's had some good jobs. And I mean, if anything, I have some longevity in my jobs, like Disney 14 years, SNL 18.
That's what I mean. A resume, that's good. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm not ready to retire.
Oh, hell no. So one question. So what ideally, when you're done with school, and obviously everything worked out perfect and look where you are now and look what you did, but what did you really want to do? Like after school, when you graduated college?
To be honest with you, man, at that point, I still wanted to be a rock star. I was in an original band. The other members were a year younger than me, so I was waiting for them to get out of school. And at that point, I had been, oddly enough, I was bitten by the academic bug. I had always been a shitty student. My grades in high school were terrible. The only reason I got into Albion College was because I sent them a demo tape of some original music. And they let me in because they thought I'd be like an artistic contributor, which I did actually. But around, I think, the end of my sophomore year, early junior year, I started getting into my classes. I started like listening to my professors, and I started 4-pointing my classes. And then all of a sudden my relationship with my father had become really great because he had been waiting for that in me. And it was probably a lot of marijuana use and being around Detroit and with hippies and guitar players, So at that point, I graduated Dean's List with an English degree and a communications degree, and I wanted to be a writer. I thought I was going to write a book. I was like, when I was backpacking through Europe before I went to New York in September, I was keeping like a mad ass journal, and I thought I was going to have my first book written within a year. And then everything fucking changed. Everything fucking changed.
Do you still have that journal?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I've done a lot of other writing since. I'm a writer pretty much first and foremost.
Good. I would say you could write a book.
Yeah, I thought about that too. I mean, and this is probably part of like sort of, zeroing in on that. Doing these kinds of talks. But I have to say, you've been great to talk to. Your energy is really great. You're
awesome, man.
You read the conversation very well. Like you don't talk over me. And some people have a problem with that, and then we lose the rhythm.
No, it's been great talking to you, man, because I love SNL, and you're an awesome guy. And well, it's been awesome, man. Thank you for taking the time. And if you ever, I don't know if you ever come to New York, but it'd be cool to connect with you because you're.
For sure, dog. I'd like that. So, will you let me know when?
Totally.
Do it, or send me a copy
I'll definitely, yeah.
Great. That'd be awesome, dude. And if you listen, man, if you think of something you want to ask me, or you want to like cap it off with something extra, feel free to reach out, man.
Yeah, I'll do that. Or honestly, I could probably put this out and then do another one and just talk to you about.
Yeah, we'll do a sequel. We'll do our sequel.
And, so we'll talk more sequels this time. We kind of did about the actors and how the films afterwards, kind of go down a little bit. But
no, I'm really interested in that too, because I want to know like how many times is the inception of the idea based on a trilogy, and how many times do they decide to do it afterwards? I mean, what's the thinking there? Obviously, The Lord of the Rings was going to be a trilogy.
Yeah.
But was The Godfather? I don't know. I mean, it took him 30 years to do the third one, right?
I know, yeah. So, that's one of the weird ones. But, that's what we'll do next time. We'll talk more sequels.
Awesome.
Awesome, man. Have a great night.
All right, Doug. You too, man.
All right, so that was JZ Zonars. He was awesome. Some of the stories he said were just so cool. The whole time when I was talking to him, I was grinning ear to ear. So don't forget to review, rate, share our podcast, and follow us on all social media at Sequels Only. Good night.